The matchup I'm looking forward to the most going into next week would be Vitality versus BDS.
SK versus G2.
G2 versus Mad Lions.
Vitality versus BDS.
Now, the reason why I'm excited for this matchup is because as of right now, both teams are sharing a first place position.
So next week they're looking to get the sole first place contention, and I think that's going to be hype in itself.
But another thing is as well that BDS bot lane has really impressed me, and they're going up against Upset and Kaiser, who's also one of the best bot lanes that we have in Europe.
I hope that we see some aggressive support picks. No Soraka versus Lulu. I want to see Rel versus Thresh go in full send.
And I think it's just going to be remarkable to take a look at all the explosive matchups we will have in the Rift. So yeah, it would have to be Vitality versus BDS for me.
I'm most looking forward to SK versus G2. I'm particularly looking forward to the bot lane Hansama and Mickey versus Exakick and Dust, who were super impressive in winter, maybe want to show a little bit more in spring. And then the top lane, Irrelevant, who often doesn't get mentioned when we talk about SK, but he's doing so much work in that top lane, and I think his matchup versus Broken Blade is going to be insane.
I am most hyped about G2 versus Mad Lions this week. G2 are such an insane team to prepare a draft against. It's going to be a great challenge for Mac and Pad to try and prep for the big brains of Dylan Falco. And whatever happens in that draft, we know it's going to be such an aggressive early game, and that's what we love.
Welcome to the final week of LEC 2023 Spring Regular Season live from Berlin, Germany. Every game truly counts this week as all of our 10 teams can still advance to the best of 3 group stage with no team having locked their spot yet. So who will perform in the clutch? Who will fall, fail, and go on vacation early? We'll find out in the next 3 days. My name is QuickShot. Before I introduce my analysts, I want to quickly remind everybody of the format. It's only the second time we've run through it here in 2023. And if you look at this drawing, it very clearly highlights it all. First and foremost, we're in the regular season where 10 teams are facing off in that single round robin best of 1. Crucially, the teams that place in 9th and 10th will be eliminated from regular season and they will not advance to the group stage. What teams are battling for over the next 3 days is first of all to lock their spot in the best of 3 double elim bracket, as well as increasing their seedings. Because teams that place in pool 1, that's first or second, will get to pick their opponents from pool 3 or pool 4. So hypothetically, if we just draw our groups right now, as you can see on your screen, SK top group A, BDS top group B, and that means they'll be able to pick their opponents. So SK will want to play, oh, let's do singles but top instead of a double. That will play Astralis for BDS on the bottom side. That's going to give you SKXL, G2 Koi. Let's quickly run through an example bracket here where what you'll notice is Koi will be the first team to be eliminated as they'll lose to G2, lose to XL. As XL advance, they'll be eliminated by G2, who lost to SK, and our first 2 teams for playoffs are going to be SK and G2. So reminder, best of 3 double elim, teams are playing for seeding throughout this weekend. Let's take a look at the standings as we start week 3 and show you how our teams are shaping up. SK, BDS, G2, and Vitality all tied in first. Then we got a 2-team tie in 5th and a 4-team tie in 7th, which is bonkers. And before I start running through just 1 or 2 small scenarios and showing how teams will advance, how teams will lock in their places in the top 8, I want to ask you at home, which 2 teams will not advance to the group stage? You can vote on discord.lec.gg. We'll reveal who you think will not be advancing in a few minutes' time. So if I can ask a production team to bring up our scenarios and our lock-in tool, as you can see here. Many of you who have watched the Analyst Desk, Ready Check, Post-Game Lobby segments will be familiar with this. What you're looking at is our team standings and the percentage of scenarios in which a team will lock in to the top 8. So I'm highlighting there, 97% of scenarios for SK, for G2, for SK, BDS, etc. But I want to quickly start with the one example I finished last week on. I was talking about Fnatic. And if I highlight Fnatic and we look at only their games, they've lost to Heretics, they've lost to Koi. Picked up wins, correction. They've lost XL, SK, Vitality, BDS. If we look at the next two matches, and let's just assume they lose to Mad Lions, notice the percentage of scenarios that they lock in drops. If they lose to G2, they only lock in 1% of the scenarios. And if I turn my attention to our opening games today, let's say Heretics pick up a win, let's say Koi pick up a win, Fnatic fans will start panicking. They do not lock in scenarios in the top 8. However, if I swap that to at least a tiebreaker, you'll notice there is still 30% of those crazy remaining scenarios. Over 37,000 different scenarios exist at this moment in time. I'll use this tool in a little bit more specificity as the day plays out. But for now, though, I think I'd like to invite my two analysts for the day, Gulborg and Yamata Cannon, to take over the telestrator. And I believe you've got a crazy scenarios. We're going to ask a magic 8-ball for support and wisdom. So, gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you very much. We do indeed have a magic 8-ball. So how about we give that a shake? And we get a completely random scenario. So what's it looking like here? Okay, so
this is just a repeat.
it does look like a repeat. Do you want to see how this repeat happens, at least for maybe XL and Fnatic?
Let's start with XL.
Okay, so let's look at XL game. So bear in mind, this is not what happens. This is just a random thing. But in this random scenario, XL lost to Koi. They beat Astralis, but they lost to BDS. And that put them in this position.
Oh my goodness.
Let's have a look at Fnatic. Let's see what put them here. Okay, so for Fnatic to end up in this position, they lost to Mad Lions, they lost to G2, and they lost to Astralis. So they just straight up lost all their games. Okay, fair enough.
We have to check out this one because Heretics popping off.
Okay, let's see what they did to make this happen. So first of all, they beat Astralis. I mean, doable, fair enough. They've also beat Vitality, and they took SK. So, I mean, technically speaking, it is doable.
It is doable.
It is
and
doable.
that's the beauty of the format, right? It's like everything can change so quickly. It's like every game matters so much that all of a sudden Team Heretics can lock pool 2, which is such a difference maker.
I think
Mad Lions is also an interesting one because they're 2 and 4 somehow.
Okay, so they beat Fnatic, they beat SK, and they beat G2. I just quickly want to look through BDS maybe before we take a look at anyone else. So for BDS to make this, all right, surprise, you just need to win all your games, and that's how you get at the top of your standings. Probably could have said that to myself.
Do you believe in this? Do you believe in the 8-ball?
Oh, do I believe in it? I think there's some parts I believe in. I could definitely see BDS maybe be stable enough to try and put all these upsets through. They have to beat Koi, have to beat XL. I can see that. And even the Vitality one. Yeah, sure. I can beat the, I can. But the Team Heretics one, maybe I'm a bit shaky on it. But you never know.
This is a bit too realistic considering the bottom 2. I want more spice. So let's roll the 8-ball again. Give us another shake. Zoom, zoom, zoom.
Give it, boom. All right, what we got here?
Oh, okay. Now this is spicier because we have a 3-way tie. These 3 teams are unlocked. We have the tiebreaker, of course. And the unique scenario here is that Team Heretics actually, I believe that they've beaten XL and they've beaten Mad Lions, which puts them in like the winner position in a potential bracket. And then they would face the winner of XL versus Mad Lions. I'm not gonna mess with the 8-ball because it doesn't show us who wins the tiebreaker. I'm gonna put that responsibility on you. Who wins the tiebreaker?
Listen, already the steps on why they got there, I'm lost on that behalf. But
who wins the tiebreaker? Who goes through?
Oh, who comes up clutch? Mad Lions. I'm gonna give it to Mad Lions to play it safe. What about you?
I think Mad Lions is the safe one. You know, they have so much experience in their pocket. I think they can just throw it. I think we should explore what happened to Fnatic because there's a lot of Fnatic dreamers out there. Only Fnatic. So they beat Mad Lions. They beat G2. People were talking shit about the match of the week. But turns out Fnatic came up with an upset. The 8-ball knows what's up.
Yeah, and then they lost to Astralis.
Gentlemen, you have to look. SK and BDS 1 and 2. How the hell does that happen?
Well, let's have a look. So SK is just 3-0ing.
Okay, I wonder if it's the same scenario as before where they just won 3-0. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there you have it, Trevor. They need to win.
All right, gentlemen, listen, that's enough that we'll play with this a little bit more later. Join me over here at the video wall. And while you do join me, I basically look at all this. I look at where we are in the standings, and I see the LEC Circle of Suck. I want to give a shout out to Zopper, X-Opper, Shopper, whatever your name is.
Get to the chopper.
Thank you, so get to the chopper. Yamata, how do teams and players view this? Because I look at that and laugh.
Yeah, in the community, we call it the Circle of Suck, but in the business, business world, you know, in the coaching world, we call this the circle of copium. Because this is what when you're one of the lowest standing teams, you walk in the room, it's like, guys, we can beat everyone. Look, anyone can beat anyone, best of ones. We just need to show up on the day. And then you just sprinkle that copium in the air. Everyone takes a huge huff. And then they just walk into that game against G2 with some ounce of confidence. And then, you know, that's the first part of the battle. You need to believe that you can win.
Exactly, but it's not just full copium as well. This has happened, right?
Yes, correct.
Few ones, baby.
And listen, the way that it happened is one of those teams that needed copium, that needed hopium was Fnatic. I mean, last week, the comeback, frankly, from a team that looked dead after week one. They picked up 2 wins. Goldborg, what do you make of this? Do you think Fnatic's chances of advancing to group stage are more likely after you see the 2 wins?
Is it more likely after they got 2 wins? Was that the question?
How do you feel about it? Does it make you believe in them more?
I'm not sure if I believe in it just yet, but I certainly believed a bit more in their capabilities when I saw their game. And it's not because they suddenly came through with a weird draft with something they hadn't tried before. They just played better. And I think Razork,
they got new hands.
Yeah, it's like they, you know, the hands got changed out and they finally got the mechanics back. They showed the pro player mentality as well. And yeah, good games from Fnatic.
I think that it's such a big hurdle to overcome to actually win a game, because this organization was on a 7-game lose streak. Sometimes you kind of lose faith in winning, and just seeing that victory screen can give you renewed hope. But I'm looking at their strategy. I don't think anyone's going to let them play Xayah to lock in the Vi as well. I don't think anyone's going to let Humanoid get his key champions coming into the 4-5, which is the Talia and the Azir. I think if people are precise with their bans and they looked at the same games I looked at, I believe that these teams might find, you know, kind of, you know, a wrench to throw into the cogs.
Because a lot of teams started disrespecting him. It's not like we didn't see Razork on Vi before, or Reckless on Xayah. Reckless was almost by far his best champion too. But it's like they got complacent and said, yeah, we don't need to ban this. We can let them have it.
I mean,
and then that happened,
I just hear Dracos' voice in my head saying, he's just got hands, for anyone that remembers the advert. Now listen, earlier in the show, I asked which 2 teams does our community and our viewers think are not going to advance? And the results have come in. XL with 29% of the vote, Heretics 26, Fnatic 25. That's very close. And then sitting behind them is Mad Lions and 14%. Yamato, when I come to you, is that going to make you, like, are you aligned with the percentages and the weighted, saying XL Heretics are most likely to drop out?
I feel like it always comes down to just the matchups. You know, it's interesting because all of the teams, except Mad Lions, face off against Astralis, and they're such a wild card. So there's like a potential for an upset there in terms of what I believe is going to be in the bottom. I just have to still have faith in Mad Lions, and that I think is up in the air for the other 3. I think it's just all about, you know, making sure that you come in, you get a good plan going, because best of ones give us that volatility that maybe 1 win can change it all.
And I mean, it just really makes sense as well that it is so evenly distributed. It's quite hard to tell, but even for XL, right, coming in with a new mid laner, Team Heretics, can they still continue with the week they had? The same for Fnatic as well, and I'm aligned with you and Mad Lions. Like,
so listen, you've heard it clear here. Yamato, Cannon, and GB predicting 2 of the 3 between XL, Heretics, and Fnatic. Those are the 2 going to drop out. We'll find out later today. We'll check in on the prediction. And we'll continue to have those regular check-ins with the telestrator throughout the weekend, and we'll keep you updated. Now, Fnatic can make it out in the end. Will heavily depend on their match versus their arch rivals G2 Esports tomorrow, and an LG Ultra Gear Match of the Week.
We are a Match of the Week? No way.
Fnatic on their way to their worst ever performance!
Playing Fnatic is always exciting, just because of the rivalry between the orgs. It was always really hype because it was always really close, and both teams had like big names in their teams. Now it's kind of derailing. It's kind of like the CLG TSM of nowadays. We feel like it's going to be a bit one-sided.
The guys in the team during winter felt really hopeless. At some point I even think people gave up. There wasn't much going for us. We were losing all of the practice games, losing everything on stage. It felt like no one really saw a future with the team.
These games on stage, usually one thing goes wrong and then you can't really play. They just snowballs.
A lesson I took from winter is to really try to care for my teammates, to motivate them, to make them feel good, so that the everyday isn't such a burden and going on stage isn't such a weight on everyone's shoulders, an embarrassment. It should be like a happy feeling, a good feeling to come up on stage, to play in front of the fans, win or lose, hopefully win, but even during losses it should feel good to be here.
Reckless and Humanoid untouched. Again, they're going to try to be the difference maker, going to try to take down Reckless, but Reckless is still alive, and Koi have thrown everything away. Fnatic taking the fight.
It felt very unusual to have a win where it really felt like we won the game. It wasn't enemy doing a mistake, it was just us playing really well.
We won twice this weekend, which kind of brings the mood, I think, up a lot. So yeah, it was really important to win.
Finding the big barrels Immortals here at the end to close it out. Fnatic, it was a rough start, it was a rough winter, but after the winter comes spring, and spring looking a lot better for Fnatic.
For the team, it would mean a lot to beat G2. Also for myself, like obviously it would be great. I'm not gonna shy away from that, and that's also the feeling that was today with beating Koi. But I think I don't need it individually so much as we need it as a team.
Perks slaughtered outside the entrance of his own base, overstaying, but it's Fortune on the bottom side. Caps, massive ultimate taking out Upset. G2 will break through Vitality as G2 will find the win.
I started OTP Draven because of Reckless. I faced him in Season 2. I remember he was playing Draven with the blue skin. I used to try very hard to beat Reckless because back then he was like the best, really like the best. I decided to just buy Draven blue skin. From that point onward, I spammed Draven. And I spammed Draven really hard, got Challenger the whole time, Season 3, Season 4, Season 5, getting to Pro. So that's because of him that I played Draven.
Is it a Penta? Someone's killed one carry! Is it a Penta? He wants to kill another!
Is it a Penta? Is it a Penta?
Oh, the Penta for Hansama!
But it hasn't worked out, so as they're trying to start a fight, Hansama, no luxury to flash this time. He's going to drop to Reckless. Mickey going back to the fountain, followed by Alfari. Misfits are routed in the mid lane, and the reigning champions will defend their title.
He's like a really like a legend AD carry, you know. Maybe I slowly became one low key. So yeah, it's gonna be fun to play against him.
It's just weird to hear these kind of things because he's king now. I am I'm working to get there, but I think he's king now.
Hansama low on mana, but the hook manages to land. First blood, cash out for the Draven. It's disaster. Rux locked down. Now Yike becomes Yumi. Reckless running the axe. Oh, it's a disaster for Fnatic. G2 just too damn clean.
So usually when you play like a bottom team, at the end of the split especially, it's kind of funny because you can deny them a playoff spot. So you're like the gatekeeper. So I think that's kind of what's going to happen next week.
I wouldn't say it means Fnatic is back, but it definitely means Fnatic has good chances of making it to the best of 3 stage, which is already a big step up. They're probably already locked going to the best of 3 stage. Maybe they're fighting for seeding, but for us, it's about bringing our best game, our A game. So it's up to ourselves if we're gonna make it. We just need to win 1 or 2 more games and we're in, and it's all in our own hands.
I mean, phenomenal video. And frankly speaking, we're going to find out tomorrow whether this is going to be a match of the week, WEEK, with Fnatic showing up, or a match of the week Fnatic. That's WEAK. For Fnatic, it is potentially do or die. And I think crucially for me, it means a lot to hear Reckless talking a lot about Hansama. He is now the king. Reckless, frankly, has fallen off. He used to be a Draven player. His champion pool is something to be discussed. And there's a lot of fans out there talking about whether or not this should be match of the week or not, but you cannot deny the history, the legacy, and how the competition between the players and the ref. We're going to find out what happens tomorrow. Before we do any of that, though, I'd like to draw attention to some of the other players that we didn't see feature in the video a lot. Looking at the top lane, I want to start with G2 Esports Broken Blade. We know he's secured a spot at MSI. I also want to talk about the evolution of the top lane pool in general. There'll be more time to talk match of the week tomorrow. So, gentlemen, as we turn, let's talk about competition. Let's talk about the quality of players. Let's talk about the imports. Maybe Yamato, give me some imports and some thoughts here on the likes of Photon and Chasey coming to the league.
I think it was very clear that everyone understood that there was like an issue coming into international tournaments where I think a lot of the European teams, in terms of how we played locally, we were very one-dimensional. Like, for example, us, we were very one-dimensional, and I think as a team, we didn't do a good job of playing through topside. And I think the whole idea and the approach to a lot of these off-seasons, when you look at teams like Vitality or teams like Mad Lions, the argument was that they want to prepare themselves for any challenge that comes your way, because you might walk into a meta that is going to be top-heavy, and then you want to have a player that is going to be ready to deliver. And then I look at the player like Photon, right? Photon, I think always when you have someone that is that good, just completely, dominating in his position, he sets the bar for everybody else. And I think he shows what you can actually do if you're heading the top side. And I think all in all, this is going to just improve the region as a whole because he sets the standard now.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it from Photon as well really comes from the laning phase. That's where he's the step ahead of everyone else. It's not like he's really getting a lot of resources for his team in the later stages of the game. The laning phase is really where it's at every single time. So I still think you spoke about it. We haven't really perfected this style of playing around top lane.
that's not just for the individual top laner, that's also for the entirety of a team. But I also agree that we've had laners in the past and junglers. You remember Huni Reignover, they completely elevated what it meant to be a top laner and jungler back then. And I think Photon is doing the same thing again now with the top lane.
I mean, look at the stats, right? So we just saw some of the highlights of his plays.
And
first in his team fight KD, highest number of solo kills, first in goal difference of 14. The interesting one for me as well, 50% of the amount of time during the laning phase, up to 40 minutes, is spent forward. So that's what that 4% is. So it tells you he likes to get in your face. He likes to jump. Yamato, talk to me about the meta, though, because we talked a little bit about the players. And I think something that stands out in my mind is it's not only the new guys that are stepping up. I didn't expect much from Adam and Finn coming into 2023. I'm very pleasantly surprised, and I apologize for doubting you guys, but they have stepped up. And what we're seeing is the unique champion pools, but we're also seeing a difference. Like, we've got tanks at the top, we've got carries, we've got more Kleds than I've ever seen in any league ever. But, like, what do you make the champion pool as well?
No, I think Adam coming back, I think after his stint in the regional leagues, I think Finn as well, you know, they've had so interesting stories coming back and just bringing their flair to the table. You have the Scion dive into bottom side. I remember playing against his Kled in playoffs where he was just diving us both too. I think it's very interesting to see the evolution of what people are capable of playing in top side. We see the Scions, we see the Nas, we see the pocket pits like the Kled. You know, Adam playing the Darius is something that is working so well, but the main thing for me is just how good they've become at transferring pressure and actually being utilized in the game and in the 5v5s.
And just like Ebby said in a recent interview, right, it is really freedom country for top laners as well, with the way that some of these picks are coming out. You mentioned Adam, right, the Darius, the Garen, all of these things that comes to mind. But also just the Scion in general, such a strong pick right now for our top laners because you can absorb so much pressure. It's so easy still to be relevant in the late game. Even if you get nothing, take it back to that Adam Scion game where he was all over bot side, never around top side, still managed to get a win out of it.
Yamato, if you'll indulge me for a little bit, it's not often that I get somebody else on the broadcast who's been around as long as I have, as old as I have, we're relics, you know, the grandpas. There may be a bunch of viewers at home that don't even know you used to be a professional top laner yourself. The reason I give that long preamble and setup is, at least in my eyes, it feels like the top lane competition is probably at one of the highest levels maybe it's ever been in Europe. And I've had this thought bouncing around my head that maybe the competition this year could prove to be the best that we've ever had. So first of all, what's your immediate take to that? And like, how do you rate that versus the decade of being here?
So there's this very forgotten split back in spring 2013. There was this top laner that came in and played for Dragonborns that really set the tone for...
What was his name? He was so...
what was his name? Yamato...
Tomato Canyon?
Tomato Canyon, yeah, something like that, you know, playing against the likes of Wicked.
Renekton one trick, right? Yeah.
As playing my Riven, my Zed. Nah, to be completely serious, I was complete garbage. 2015 is the one that comes to mind right away, because that's what I'm thinking about. When I think of Photon playing right now, it's like, what does this remind me of? This reminds me of when Huni was running the league. 2015, it's like, I don't remember any other top laners that were playing back then, but I just remember Huni, because he was completely 1v9ing, he was redefining the whole league, he was TPing bot. They nerfed TP practically because of how Huni played, and I feel like he really redefined the position and made Europe very dangerous at a world championship that was very top-centric.
I think when you ask the question, is it the best he ever been? I think if I think back to 2018, really, that's probably where I would put it as well. Because like you have the likes of Soas and Bwipo on the same team as well. Wunder was around too, like and Caposhot even back then as well. We just had so many stacked top laners as well. So I think for me specifically, I would have to put it on the 2018. And if you ask about an EU Go top laner, I think I will always answer Soas myself.
Do you know the thing I really love about this is that we'll actually get a chance to see this because we know Broken Blade will at least represent G2 on behalf of LEC. We'll see who's going to be joining in at MSI. Ooh. So maybe we can test this theory, right? We'll watch it throughout the year. I'm just trying to have some spicy thoughts. So thank you for the trip down memory lane. I apologize to anyone who wants to focus on today's show, but now we're going to, because let's turn our attention to our first match of the day. And it's going to start with Heretics. They had an important 2-1 week last week after they went winless in week 1. Crucially for me, at least to the eye test, players around Jankos all stepped up and played a lot better. I think Ruby in particular, his Ahri looked much better than the control mages that he's shown thus far.
Yeah, for sure. Like this was a different pick from what we've seen in the LEC from Ruby at least, and he was just a different beast on it as well. You can actually see that he was able to take agency with this. He was able to find picks with the charm, and he was able to do a lot more damage and just in general good team fighting for his team in this instance.
I think this composition that they put together was very good because it was very streamlined in what you wanted to do. You just CC chain, play around your cooldowns, and I think that they did it beautifully. When I think of Ruby, when he had success in the eras, it was often the area. I believe it was his most played. And just to highlight once again, I think Mercer, our best memories of Mercer was when he indeed was playing that melee champion. And when he could connect and play together with Jankos and of course, Ruby, then things were looking good.
Question I have is, how's he going to handle leader today? As we take a look at the stats here, statistically, you look at damage share, obviously a little bit more involved for Ruby on his team. But outside of the stats just alone, leader has already been able to shut up many haters, taking down the likes of Vitality, G2. GB, what do you think of this matchup? And then by extension, Astralis versus her?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting now that Ruby finally had the week that he just had. Because had it just been the control mage that he had continued to play, I would say give it to leader.
Smash him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But now you see different signs of life from Ruby, but the same can be said for leader as well, because he's not just that melee player coming in with the Aurelia or anything like that. He's been willing to play different champion. He's played the Annie, albeit it didn't go too well, but he's also shown other control mages where you can see that you can't just expect leader to go for melee. He has different things in his toolkit now.
No, for sure. I think that's like the mistake that we've seen twice, where people over-index on this identity of leader. I think the best thing that you can do is to just pick mid lane as late as you can, and then try to keep it as safe and simple. Use your 4-5 bans to set up, of course, your mid lane pick, and don't over-index on this idea that leader is only going to play melees, because like Vitality, for example, they blind pick Lissandra. He just picked early on Soul and had the freest game of his life.
It's about not over-indexing, but still respect the fact that it can happen. And that kind of what makes him scary.
So the follow-up that I'm going to have then is, while yes, you do have to respect the impact that he can have, you have to appreciate his champion pool. I think as a play style, at least to me, Astralis are the team I'm expecting to go all in. I'm expecting just full stop aggression. They're a team that like, I don't know why I'm going to ult, like Gambit-esque, look for see hero, kill hero. And I think that was something that Mad Lions had a great answer for. They were able to counterpick. They used that Gragas roaming well. As a team, does Heretics have the answers to either match them in the combat and the chaos, or are they smart enough to control them and keep them at arm's length?
I think the most dangerous thing about Astralis is just how volatile they are willing to make their early game. They play very high risk, and if it goes well in their favor, they are going to dominate the game. They remind me a lot of the team that I was working with back in 2018. We were very awkward to play against, and we made sure that the game was dive heavy, invade heavy, pressure heavy. If we screw up, the game was over.
Yeah,
but it kind of puts
in your control.
It's kind of the equivalent of coming into draft with a gun with one bullet. You better aim it properly, or if you miss, like you shoot yourself in the foot, it's a disaster, you know? So you're just gonna, beat yourself to death somehow.
Where are you aiming?
Try to not aim downwards with that one.
Thank you, GB. I'm with you on that one.
It happens. It happens.
True. Yeah, honestly, have we all been there? I don't think we have.
We haven't.
But also, I think from the side of Team Heretics, we finally started seeing something being streamlined in terms of an identity. They were struggling. Jankos have even talking about, we don't really know what our identity is going to be. Then they went on to win the next game, and Jack Spectra said, I know what our identity is going to be. And then that was all about the all-in. We saw the Kai'Sa, we saw Ruby on the Ahri. It was just dive compositions, fight. And I think the big thing with Team Heretics was they were finally on the same page as well.
The main thing for me is, how will Team Heretics deal with Kobe Young-hoon? It's like Kobe Young-hoon, these guys, they are smiling, putting thumbs up, because I think you can put any thumbs up as long as you have Kobe Young-hoon on your team.
Can also jump in there. I think that might be the remote-controlled camera that's sitting on the desk, and it's moving to their head motions. It's actually the jib. So it's even bigger. It's like a 17-foot crane camera. Okay, I do hear there is a very small delay on stage before draft. I do want to push us along because I've been a bit indulgent. I want to talk about two other players that have impressed. I think Kobe and Young-hoon. I think in particular, Young-hoon and Kobe last week, GB, or Yamato maybe, they popped off, they got a bunch of 2v2 kills, and they are shining in week 2.
These guys are always winning 2v2. They always create volatility that is favorable towards their side, and I feel like this is what is giving, of course, the rest of the team opportunities to capitalize. You can only roam into bot if you have an opportunity to do so, and I feel like Astralis, they're in conversation of being the best performing bot lane in Spring Split so far.
I completely agree, and I think it's the fact that they create an insane amount of pressure in the 2v2 alone that even when they bring multiple members, like, teams make mistakes against them. They're willing to bet on those mistakes as well and try and outplay them completely. And I think we saw that multiple times against Vitality, but it's not just been a bet against against them, as you said, they found multiple 2v2 kills. And what's so impressive is the fact that, you know, we used to say in pro play, oh, solo kills and that never usually happen. It usually has to be jungle influence. Not for this bot lane. It's just Junghoon and Kobe, and they're doing their stuff.
I mean, they really are. If you notice, you can see our league officials on stage right now, as well as the timer has been reflected. I've got one more question I want to ask you before we talk a little bit specifics on draft. Who will win this game today and why? And before you give me your answer, I would like to show you some inspiration from Team Heretics. They had a phenomenal tweet, but once again, dip back to a classic. Taking on Astralis. Motivation
Jack needs to rename to Jack Spectra. Look at him, dude. Oh, he's ready to do his own stunts. He's committing to the whole...
I love this.
Oh my goodness.
This is great, you know, it has multiple dimensions to it as well. They're playing against Astralis. They used to be Origin. Origin was the first one to bring motivation, work improvement team.
This was a revolutionary approach to coaching, and I'm sad it's disappeared.
Graphic design is my passion.
What I will say is, Gulborg, as I asked you to give me a prediction here, Team Heretics were the team that was most voted by our Discord server to not advance to groups.
Yes.
Team Heretics has only won one game at the moment. 2 games at the moment, struggling a lot, but not looking particularly happy. Who do you think's going to win and why?
So I could go with Logic. That would be kind of boring. I looked at that 8-ball over there earlier, and that 8-ball kept telling me that Team Heretics were going to win against Astralis. I put that into, with some logic, the fact that Astralis keeps beating the teams ahead of them, and they keep losing to the teams under them. Where do we find Team Heretics? Under them. What did the 8-ball say? They're going to win. Boom. Team Heretics takes it.
Okay.
I can't fault the logic. I can't fault the logic. Yamato?
I can argue against it a little bit. I think Astralis, definitely, I think they play with such an elevated sense of volatility that they can fall over themselves sometimes in the pursuit of finding those big advantages. I think that the main thing is, can Team Heretics survive the onslaught? Because Team Heretics, in their early games, they tend to give up a little bit too much sometimes. And I think this is where the big question will be. Astralis with their bottom side, and what leader is going to potentially pick, will they be able to survive the early game? Because Astralis are really sharp at snowballing.
I think just the thing that's going to be really defining, at least for Team Heretics, going into this game, it's not so necessarily going to be their individual prowess, because we have a pretty good read on the players there. What really matters for this team is just the fact that they have a clear game plan and they're all going for the same play, because that's been an issue for them. Not only just going for the same play, but going for the correct play as well at the same time. They finally started doing it last week, but can they keep it up?
15 seconds, last comment, Yamato.
I think Astralis, if they remove Wukong and Vi, Jankos is the best performer. Remove his tools, because when he can dominate, he does so.
I mean, Jankos has been the one player that I think has stood out across all 6 of their previous games. Can they put him on the battle pig, keep him locked under the table, and push Heretics out of the group stage? We're going to find in a moment or two as we head to our caster page. Start of the day, Medic and Jemana.